As you obviously know everything about geology, tell me, how do the rocks start run here?
It's pretty much the same to me, whichever way they run, Herr Professor.
Einstein's teachers tried to drum into him, as Faraday had shown, that energy could be converted from one form into another. They also believed that all forms of energy had already been discovered. Einstein was going to prove them wrong. He would discover a new, vast reservoir of energy hidden where no other scientist had ever thought of looking. Deep in the heart of matter. 100 years before Einstein's birth, King Louis XV was on the throne of France. But the ancient absolute power of the monarchy over the people was starting to be challenged.
Jacques, leave the windows. Forget the rain. We need air.
The French Revolution was just around the corner.
This was the era of enlightenment, when intellectuals believed very firmly that the way forward lay in science. And they felt that one of the first tasks that lay ahead of them was to rationalize and to classify every single kind of matter so they could see how it all interacted together.
Antoine Lavoisier, a wealthy, aristocratic young man, decided to take up this task, to see if there was some basic connection between all the stuff of everyday life, all the different substances in the world. But what worked for Lavoisier as a scientist, his meticulous, even obsessive attention to detail, was also to be his downfall.
Monsieur Lavoisier, you are, if my eyes do not deceive me, consuming only milk this evening. First you had a glass of milk, now you are eating a bowl of milk. Will you next move on to a plate of milk?
Your precise observations commend you as a lady of scientific curiosity, mademoiselle. Most unusual. As you seek knowledge, so I shall dispense it. For the last 5 weeks, I have taken nothing but milk.
Good God, man. I would rather die than fast on milk for 5 weeks. Are you in the grip of some horrendous ailment?
On the contrary, I am investigating the effects of diet on health.
And monsieur, with the greatest of respect to a member of the Royal Academy of Sciences, your gut must think your throat has been slit.
Whereas your gut, Count, is no doubt petitioning the Academy for a widening of your throat.
Marianne, how dare you insult the Count? Don't forget what the Count offers. Not just marriage, but think of how you will be introduced to all the salon. You will be the toast of Paris.
Would it not be a shame, madame, to burden you with the duties of matrimony before you have had a chance to experience your curiosity for nature?
Shall we all go through? It's getting rather hot in here.
Do you really plan to marry the Amaval?
There's a plan, but it is not mine.
Then I must contrive to save you.
Lavoisier wasn't a scientist by profession. He was the head of tax enforcement in Paris. His great idea was to build a huge wall round the city and to tax everything that came and went. But his taxes on the simple things in life, bread, wine, and cheese, did not endear him to the average Parisian. This scrupulous, fastidious young man did still allow himself the occasional act of passion. In 1771, Lavoisier married Marianne Pauls, the daughter of his colleague in the tax office. Thus, he saved her, as he had promised, from an arranged marriage to a count 40 years her elder.
Allow me to show you something.
Lavoisier, I think, found his job as a tax collector really rather tedious, and the times he looked forward to were the evenings and the weekends when he could indulge his passion for chemical experimentation. And he called those times his jours de bonheur, his days of happiness.
Madame. What will happen if I take a bar of copper or iron and leave it outside in the rain for months on end? Madame Lavoisier.
Monsieur Lavoisier.
The metals. What will become of them?
Is this a verbal examination? Prior to an examination proper, sir?
I merely seek the truth.
Then you joy with me, monsieur, for you know the truth. The copper will become covered in a green verdigris, and the iron will rust. I believe the term is calcined.
Most impressive, my charming wife. But let me press you further. When the metal rusts, does it get heavier or lighter?
Why, sir, I think you mean to trap me.
Oh. Then perhaps this little butterfly should land and allow me to take a closer look.
Every last citizen in France of sensible age knows that when a metal rusts, it wastes away. It gets lighter and eventually disappears. Stop. I have not finished. Contain yourself, sir. There is more. In a recently published pamphlet by a brilliant young chemist, Antoine Lavoisier demonstrates that the iron combines with the air. It, in fact, becomes heavier.
Most impressive. I intend...
Now, whatever you intend, monsieur, I intend to be by your side. I will learn all I can about your science and become your worthy colleague.
Then let me show you how the iron combines with the air to form such a delicate union.
Tomorrow, monsieur. Tomorrow.
Marianne learned chemistry at her husband's side, but soon sought other ways to contribute to his work. She learned English so that she could translate contemporary scientific works. She took drawing lessons so that she could record in forensic detail the minutiae of their work together. She ran their laboratory and was the public face of Lavoisier, Inc. She was central to the whole research effort.
That is a terrible thing to say. You are a cheeky man.
This way, please, gentlemen. Monsieur, it is my great ambition to demonstrate that nature is a closed system. That in any transformation, no amount of matter, no mass, is ever lost, and none is gained. Over here, please. This precise amount of water is heated to steam. This steam is brought into contact with a red-hot iron barrel embedded in the coals. From this end, we cool the steam. But interestingly, we collect less water than we started with. So clearly, we lose a certain amount of water. However, we also collect a gas. And the weight of the iron barrel increases. Now, when we combine these two increases, the new weight of the iron barrel and the gas we have collected, they are exactly equal to the weight of the lost water.
Ah, but is it atmospheric air, Monsieur Lavoisier?
No. No, because I am measuring it to the very last grain. I can see that it is lighter than the air around us. And, moreover, it is flammable. Voila.
Water is made out of hydrogen and oxygen. So what he had done is get the oxygen to stick to the inside of a red-hot iron rifle barrel. He was basically just making rust, which is oxygen and iron, but he was making the rust really quickly. Now that left the hydrogen, what he called combustible air, and that was just floating around as a gas. No mass had been lost, it had merely been transformed. And now he wanted to transform it all back into water.
This is only the beginning. In the next few months, I hope to demonstrate that I can recombine this combustible air with vital air and transform them both back into water. I will recreate exactly the same amount of water that was lost here in this process. It is my hope to complete the cycle, water into gas, into water, and not a drop lost.
For a long time, Lavoisier had suspected that the exact amount of matter, the mass, involved in any transformation was always conserved. But to prove this, he had to perform thousands of experiments, and he had to do the measurements with incredible accuracy. That's where his great wealth from being a tax collector came in. He could afford to commission the most sensitive instruments ever built. He became obsessed with accuracy.
But Lavoisier's exacting methods were also starting to anger the growing mob of hungry, disenchanted Parisians.
Antoine? Antoine? Oh, wake up, Antoine!
I'm sorry. What time is it?
It is almost time to receive Monsieur Marat. The Academy asks you to assess his designs. He claims to have made a great discovery. Oh, Antoine, have you forgotten?
Oh, God. There's another charlatan with an idea to peddle. God give me patience. Monsieur Marat.
Monsieur, I have invented a device which projects an image of the substance of fire onto a screen. You see? When a lantern is shone through a flame, we see a shimmering pattern above the flame. My device renders the substance of fire visible.
Have you collected it, this substance of fire? Have you trapped it and measured it?
Oh, no, but one can see it.
I'm sorry, in the absence of exact measurements, of precise observations, without rigorous reasoning, one can only be engaging in conjecture, so this is not science.
I am not given to conjecture, monsieur.
Really? No. If you will excuse me, I am extremely busy today, but thank you. Thank you.
So that is all? Then good day, monsieur!
Well, let me guess, Marat. The King's scientific despot has decreed that your invention does not conform to the version of the truth as laid down by the Academy.
Lavoisier. He talks about facts. He worships the truth.
Listen to me, my friend. They are all the same, the Royal Academies. They insult the liberty of the mind.
They think they are the sole arbiters of genius. They are rotten to the core, just like every other tentacle of the king. The people. It is they who will determine right and wrong.
Don't worry. In my next pamphlet, I will expose this persecutor of yours.
For years, the Lavoisiers burned, chopped, melted, and boiled every conceivable substance. They'd shown that as long as one is scrupulous about collecting all the vapors, liquids, and powders created in a transformation, then mass is not decreased. Liquids might become gases, metals may rust, wood may become ash and smoke, but matter, the tiny atoms that make up all substances, none of it is ever lost. The crowning glory of this opus was their remarkable use of static electricity to cause oxygen and hydrogen to recombine back into water.
What is happening?
As the French Revolution exploded, the royal family and whole swaths of aristocrats lost their heads on the guillotine.
To the French revolutionaries of 1790, Lavoisier meant one thing and one thing only. He was the despised tax collector who'd built that wall around Paris.
Lavoisier's job as a tax collector brought him under suspicion. He was denounced by a failed scientist turned radical journalist, Jean-Paul Marat.
Où est Lavoisier?
Je sais pas.
Lavoisier! Lavoisier! Lavoisier!
What Lavoisier did is absolutely central to science and especially T equals MC squared. Because what he said is if you take a bunch of matter, you can break it apart, you can recombine it, you can do anything to it, and the stuff of the matter won't go away. If the mob burned Paris to the ground, utterly razed it, shattered the bricks into rubble and dust, and burned the buildings into ashes and smoke, turns out if you put a huge dome over Paris and weighed all the smoke and all the ashes and all the rubble, it would add up to the exact same weight as the original city and the air around it before. Nothing disappears.
A century later, all of nature had been classified into two great domains. There was energy, the forces that animated objects, and there was mass, the physical stuff that made up those objects. The whole of 19th century science rested on these two mighty pillars. The laws that governed one did not apply to the other. But young, newly enrolled physics student Albert Einstein didn't like laws.
Good grief, Einstein. What happened to you?
It is more than a little ironic, having been reprimanded yesterday by that idiot Professor Pernay for poor attendance, that I should in fact attend a practical lesson, which was as long as it was boring and utterly pointless, by the way, only to be the victim of an explosion of my own apparatus.
So it was your own fault, then?
Thank you. And how are you today, Fraulein Marriage?
Extremely well, Herr Einstein. All the better for seeing you have escaped the physics laboratory with your life.
Well, in order not to alarm you any further, I pledge to forever continue my studies here at the Café Bahnhof, reading only the great masters of theoretical physics and eschewing the babbling nonsense of the polytechnicians.
It's about all you ever do.
It's getting a little stuffy in here, Fraulein Marriage. Would you care to take a walk with me? There's something I'd like to discuss with you.
Why, Herr Einstein? Of course. Perhaps you'd like me to tell you what you have missed in lectures this week.
Einstein wasn't exactly a model student. He excelled in certain subjects, especially physics and math, but he wasn't very diligent in a lot of his other classes. He was undoubtedly very questioning, which seems to have annoyed most of his professors throughout his life. He would pursue his fascinations with just incredible determination.
We know from